Warning, the following video contains scenes from Rick and Morty, which as you may know is the smartest show ever written. If you're not at least as smart as this man, then you will not understand any of the topics being discussed in this video. That was a fun little opening joke, wasn't it? But it's also a little bit sad that I get to make it, because it's about the reputation that Rick and Morty has. Like The Dark Knight or Joker, there are a lot of people who like to say it's intelligent while only pointing to superficial elements of it. And our protagonist, Rick, is a very unwise but intelligent man who blames a lot of his problems on his intelligence. Since he's basically a post from r/I am very smart, and the show frames him as the main character, it attracts a lot of those kinds of people as fans of the show, who will then go on to talk about how amazing the show is because they identify with Rick, without realizing that the show is making fun of people like Rick.
What are the odds this is legit, not just some big lie we're all telling ourselves because we're afraid to die alone? Because, you know, that's exactly how we all die. Alone.
Oh boy.
Oh wow, what a profound message this has about marriage. Hang on, people don't always die alone. What the fuck is Rick talking about? The following video contains scenes from Rick and Morty. If you're not at least as smart as this man...
Ooh, boy, who let the frogs out, huh?
You won't understand anything that's going on. But because these fans who don't actually understand that they're being made fun of will often very vocally go on and on about how great this show is.
To be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Rick and Morty. The humor is extremely subtle, and without a solid grasp of theoretical physics, most jokes will go over a typical viewer's head.
As a reaction to that kind of person, a lot more people seem to be pointing to the lowbrow comedy in the show, and then using that to conclude that the show has very little of worth to offer. These people have also got the wrong idea, just the wrong idea in the other direction. Similar to Joker and The Dark Knight, just because there are a lot of wanks who like it for questionable reasons, isn't a reason that any of these pieces of media don't have a lot to offer. For the rest of this video, there is gonna be the spoileroos, so if that's not something that you're interested in hearing, go away. And, for everyone who's still here, let's delve into the strengths of Rick and Morty. Part 1. High concept sci-fi, I'm Dad. Warning, Part 1 contains scenes from Rick and Morty, so if you're not at least as smart as this man,
I'm Ben Shapiro, this is The Ben Shapiro Show.
then you won't have enough brain juice to understand what's going on. Rick and Morty plays around with a lot of high concept sci-fi ideas, often more than one per episode. For every joke like this,
AIDS!
there's also a joke like this.
What is my purpose?
Pass the butter. Thank you.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
Yeah, welcome to the club, pal.
This is a throwaway joke, but the punchline of that joke is that while many people are on a quest for a meaning of life, and while many people find comfort in believing that they have been created for a specific purpose, that if they were actually told by their creator what that purpose is, that they still may not find that fulfilling, which I think is pretty high concept for a throwaway joke. And, of course, it's not just throwaway jokes they use the high concept stuff on. The premise of most episodes is something quite high concept like this. Season 2, Episode 6, The Ricks Must Be Crazy, deals with not the same but a similar concept that what if your universe was created by a god, but that god is apathetic to you and your civilization bar one specific purpose they have in mind for you? And what if this being is so powerful that that purpose is something mundane and simple, like running your creator's car? They created your entire universe on a whim and don't really care about it that much. Many people see their belief in a god as giving them meaning or purpose, but what if there was a god and the existence of that god made the universe no less cold or uncaring? In this episode, the god in question is Rick, who's created a universe to power his car. Rick's car battery is a little universe in a box, and Rick has taught the inhabitants of that universe to generate electricity, but what they don't know is that he harvests the majority of their electricity for his own use. The plot of the episode sees Rick's universe battery stop working. He goes inside the universe to see what's gone wrong, to find that the inhabitants of that universe are no longer generating power by a means by which Rick can harvest it, because they've invented the same technology and are now powering everything they use with their own tiny universe. Over the course of the story, the inhabitants of Rick's car battery discover that they were created for that purpose, and after this discovery go back to generating power by a means by which Rick can harvest it, but now it's not because they've been tricked into it, It's because they know their uncaring creator will no longer have a use for their universe if they're not generating him power. They need to keep their god happy, or their god won't have a reason to maintain their universe. The episode raises a lot of interesting questions about a supposed meaning of life, proposing that if we ever were to find a definitive purpose to our existence, that instead of bringing us fulfillment, it would limit our freedom. I feel pretentious already reading into this, but it's all there. Rick and Morty, while providing plenty of fart jokes and lowbrow humour, also provides a lot of food for thought. It does all of this within a 20-minute time slot, while also finding time to explore characters, make stupid jokes, and have a B story, which arguably has just as much to read into as the A story does. Let's do this same very quick analysis to another episode. Alright, let's spin the wheel to see which episode we're going to talk about next. No, not really. Hang on. Bear with me. No. Okay, let's... Oh my god, no way! It's landed on the one that I've already written a script for! What a crazy coincidence! In the episode Autoerotic Assimilation, Rick, Morty, and Summer come face to face with a hive mind entity known as Unity. What Unity does is vomit in people's mouths, but instead of carrot chunks, the vomit contains the essence and the mind of Unity. If Unity has vomited in your mouth, your mind goes away and is replaced with an extension of Unity's mind. Unity controls your body as part of itself. As the story of the episode begins, we see that Unity has taken over an entire planet, and with the minds of everyone on that planet unified, it's now a peaceful, prosperous utopia. People who were drug addicts are now scientists. People who were homeless are now philosophers. Rick and Unity used to date, and Rick, for old time's sake, manages to persuade Unity into getting absolutely fucking minced. The episode is mainly an exploration of Rick's relationship with Unity and what it means for both of their characters. But I'm going to be talking about characters in the next bit of this video, which means I'm forbidden from doing it right now. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. It's against the law, and the law I would never break. But the story about Rick and Unity's relationship is very neatly woven into the rest of the story about Unity. When Rick and Unity get drunk together, this causes Unity to lose some control. Not in a normal losing control because of alcohol way. That is normal, right? Oh god. No, when I say Unity loses control, I mean Unity loses control of some of the people that it's assimilated. They revert to what they used to be before their minds were occupied. Loads of people who were enslaved by Unity are now free. So they immediately start a race war. Summer, who previously absolutely despised Unity as it's an entity that thrives on enslavement, suddenly becomes very pro-Unity.
Unity, I am so sorry. I didn't know freedom meant people doing stuff that sucks.
By presenting two polar extremes like this, the first being authoritarianism to an extent that's currently just impossible, you can't control people's minds.
It's impossible to control someone's mind. You will subscribe to my channel on YouTube.
You will obey the will of the Geons.
You will tweet me a picture of your cat, because I like cats.
You see, I mentioned cats without even turning it into a play on words where I said the word pussy. Hey, did you know that pussy can also mean vajungus? Hi, I'm GXE, and welcome to Overused Jokes That Just Won't Fucking Die! By presenting us with authoritarianism carried out to a degree that simply isn't possible, and then immediately contrasting that to people using their freedom to turn to racist anarchistic violence, the show is presenting the audience with a question that's plagued humankind forever, which is the trade-off between freedom and safety. In a world where someone is free to stab you, then you are not safe. In a world where someone isn't free to stab you, then they're less free. Even if that's not something you should want to do anyway. Keith? Stop fucking stabbing me, Keith! The episode presents us with a world that to many people's ideals would be perfect, except it lacks freedom entirely. To ask the question, how much freedom is it worth giving up to achieve a perfect society? It doesn't present us with any kind of definitive answer, it simply presents us the question and allows us to think about it for ourselves. Another interesting addition to this is that while Unity's world may seem great, minus the whole no freedom thing, Unity isn't presented as infallible. Unity may have formed a brilliant brilliant society, but it still has a soft spot for Rick, which impedes its judgment.
Probably shouldn't be piloting a hovercopter, nor should I be running 200,000 pediatric hospitals and 12 million deep fryers.
Should we maybe stop somewhere and get you a coffee?
No, if I wanted to be sober, I wouldn't have gotten drunk.
The events of this story put forward the notion that even if we could fully sacrifice all of our autonomy, that, well, how will we know that the thing we're sacrificing our autonomy to will make better decisions than we would? You don't need a supersized mega brain IQ to understand this show. You can just giggle at the farts if you want, but there's certainly food for thought in here. I'm not trying to imply that I have some kind of super mega brain IQ, by the way. I'm far too humble, modest, and attractive to do something like that. But I don't think it's these high concept sci-fi ideas that make the show as great as it is. Don't get me wrong, I love those ideas, and I really like seeing them explored, but they're really only part of the picture when it comes to Rick and Morty, which would be a far lesser show if it then didn't also explore the impact that all of these things have on its characters. Part 2. Characterization. Warning! Part 2 contains scenes from Rick and Morty if you're not at least as smart as this man.
Let me see what you have.
You won't be able to understand anything that's going on. Rick and Morty has fantastic character writing. The show is at its strongest when it's using its crazy, wacky premises to explore its characters. What impact will these crazy things have on these people? Rick, for example, has been exposed to this crazy, wacky sci-fi shit more than any of the other characters. To him, a potentially world-ending event is boring and commonplace because he's seen so many before. In fact, he's caused a few. After all this, he's become jaded and apathetic, seemingly out of necessity. Think about it this way. If he actually did care, how would he sleep at night? He's lived a life where in order to come to terms with the things that he's done and the things that he's seen, he has to be a nihilist, someone who believes that life is meaningless.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
Yeah, welcome to the club, pal.
Otherwise, he'd have to face head-on the morality of everything that he's done in the past. And this worldview allows him to act up further and further. It's a vicious cycle that can only result in Rick being an immoral asshole. This is why he desperately wants to be a nihilist, but he can't help care about a few odd things here and there. He'll talk about how he doesn't care about anything and about how little anyone means to him at the drop of a hat. For example, after going out of his way to rescue Morty and Summer from the Citadel of Ricks, Rick has this to say.
Your mom wouldn't have accepted me if I came home without you and your sister, so now you know the real reason I rescued you.
Okay, harsh, but first of all, Rick, if that's true, why would you care if Beth accepts you? If you don't care about anyone, surely that doesn't matter. Surely you can just pack up and go somewhere else. Or if you really don't want to do that, why not use one of the many methods we know you have access to simply replace Morty and Summer with either identical copies from other universes, with clones, or with robots, all of which we know you can do. If all he was really after was for Beth to accept his return, then there were much easier ways for him to achieve that. Well, we get a pretty clear answer to this in the episode Rest and Rick Laxation later in the series, where it's revealed that Rick cares about Morty, but considers that attachment to be toxic and irrational. We learn he cares, but he really doesn't want to. If you've not seen this show, or even just this episode before, the stuff I'm showing you on screen right now with like gooey Rick and gooey Morty is the stuff I'm saying it is, I promise. It's explicitly stated in this scene that that's how Rick feels. Rick is always talking about how little he cares about people, but why he's actually saying that kind of stuff becomes a lot clearer when we go on to hear him say stuff like this.
Morty, not that I give a shit, but are you okay?
This life that Rick leads has left him a man who desperately wishes he didn't care. Release an uncensored version of this scene, you cowards. A huge amount of the show is an exploration of how this life affects him. From the plotline he goes through with Unity, where he views a hive mind collective composed of likely billions of minds as an equal that he can date because, well, he's used to this kind of life. Some of the people you meet just are mega hive minds. To the episode where he's happy to do something on such a grand scale as to create a universe to do something as simple as power his car. He sees mass life, mass death, mass enslavement as normal. And this outlook is deftly woven into his characterization. Fuck, I'm quoting that copy pasta. This is why it's hard to praise the show without sounding like a wank. Fortunately for me, I'm used to sounding like a wank, but someone who's not quite as used to this life is Morty. In the last few years, Rick has started taking Morty on these adventures with him, and these experiences have definitely been having an impact on him. Over the 4 seasons of the show that we've seen so far, Morty has become more and more like Rick. More jaded, more cynical, and more desensitized to horrible things.
Look, Morty.
Shh. Careful, Ethan. Your s'more is burning.
You couldn't do an episode like Vindicators in Season 1. In Season 1, Morty would have freaked the fuck out if he saw Rick killing a load of good people, but because of all of the horrific adventures he's been on with Rick since then, now he's more like, I'm fucking sick of your shit, Rick.
I'll disarm the drunkenly improvised neutrino bomb. Morty, how many of these? Too many, Rick! Too many!
Rick and Morty deeply explores all of its major characters fairly regularly on what is essentially a quest to find out what makes them tick. Let's talk about Pickle Rick.
I'm Pickle Rick! I turned myself into a pickle, Morty! Boom! Big reveal! I'm a pickle! What do you think about that? I turned myself into a pickle!
Pickle Rick, while giving the appearance of being a daft comedy about a man who turns himself into a pickle, also, it is that, like... That is what it is. But while other shows may just leave it at that and have an absurdist episode about a man running around with his brain in a pickle, Rick and Morty uses this premise to explore characters and character motivations. The episode is an exercise in examining the fact that Rick refuses to improve as a person, that he refuses to try and better himself, and that he refuses to learn from his experiences. It goes over his flaws and the excuses that he uses to justify those flaws to himself. The episode begins with the reveal that Rick has turned himself into a pickle.
I turned myself into a pickle, Morty! Boom! Big reveal, I'm a pickle!
He claims that he turned himself into a pickle simply out of scientific curiosity, because he wanted to challenge himself. But as the episode progresses, we learn that the family is booked in for family therapy, and Rick turned himself into a pickle to avoid going. I can't go to family therapy! I'm a pickle! It's the age-old excuse. The A story sees Rick running into complications because he is a pickle and having to survive as a pickle. It's quite silly. He really does manage to get himself in quite a pickle. Oh! I made that joke! And you can't unhear it now. The B story examines Summer, Morty, and Beth with a particular focus on Beth as they attend family therapy without Rick. The episode shows Beth actively hostile towards her therapist, Dr. Wong, first showing her respect for Rick.
I was told there was a grandpa that might be joining us.
He got wrapped up in an experiment. He's a scientist. Like, legit.
Then explores her compulsive need to defend him when Dr. Wong starts asking questions about him. But it's not until Rick actually shows up to the therapy because he needs to, because Beth has the serum that will change him back from a pickle and he'll die without it. Did I mention this episode's quite silly? It's not until then that we get to the meat of the episode.
I don't respect therapy because I'm a scientist. When I don't like something about the world, I change it. I think it's helped a lot of people get comfortable and stop panicking, which is a state of mind we value in the animals we eat, but not something I want for myself.
Rick, the only connection between your unquestionable intelligence and the sickness destroying your family is that everyone in your family, you included, use intelligence to justify sickness.
They've used the silly little, he's turned himself into a pickle episode to explore the major flaws of our main character. And then we get to see how he reacts to being explicitly told what the problem with him is. Rick prides himself on his intelligence but doesn't realize that he lacks wisdom. He seems to view intelligence as either you are or you aren't, and doesn't understand that there are different ways in which someone can be intelligent. So he's not willing to accept that someone else might know what his problems are better than he does. The idea that that can even happen isn't something that fits within his worldview. It's not something that he's chosen to acknowledge as a possibility. But now it's being explicitly pointed out to him, and by extension the audience, that while he's developed his flaws in response to his experiences, that these experiences and his intelligence don't simply cause him all of his problems. They're not exclusively to blame, they're not the reason he's an asshole, they're just an excuse he gives. Just like him being a pickle isn't actually a reason he can't go to therapy, it's his excuse. I feel smug for noticing that parallel. So there you have it. Rick and Morty is a weird little show with some great writing in it. It plays around with a huge variety of high-concept sci-fi ideas, taking them to their logical extremes, their logical endpoints to ask questions about things, and will use these crazy premises that it has to explore its characters in interesting and imaginative ways. It's a shame that its reputation has been dragged down by certain people. And another thing, this video is sponsored by Skillshare, which is an online learning community for creators. Whether you want to learn how to design, how to do business, or how to turn yourself into a pickle, it's all on Skillshare, where they have over 30,000 classes for you to take and do and learn from. I would like to become a pickle. Not for too long, like for maybe like 20 or 30 minutes. I'd just like to see what it's like. I'm curious. I'm pickle curious. Premium membership will give you unlimited access to all of these classes so that you can get so smart that you can understand Rick and Morty. Whether you want to fuel your creativity, curiosity, or career, Skillshare. Skillshare has a community of over 7 million creators. Once you're part of this community, you can join groups to give and receive feedback on projects, or just talk to people who have the same interests that you do. One of those interests for me was digital design, so I've been taking this class by Tebikoka, which lets me learn more about that, which alone is worth it just to look at his beautiful art. If you click the link in the description below, you'll get 2 months of premium Skillshare absolutely free. But other than that, I hope you've enjoyed. Goodbye.